Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and kick things off here. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Mazévo Connect. This is our monthly webinar series that we do every month on various Mazévo topics. This month, we're going to be talking about reporting. If this is your first Mazévo Connect, welcome. The way we typically do these is I'll just say a few announcements here and then we'll get started with our topic. The topic today is going to be presented by we here at Mazévo staff. Sometimes we have customers also that help us out with these as well. So while we're going through the topic, if you do have any questions, we definitely encourage this to be interactive. So if you have any questions and you want to just get them in right away, you're welcome to use the chat in Zoom and just put your questions in there. We will be monitoring the chat during the webinar. And then also we will save a few minutes at the end. So sometimes that's easier for people. If you have a question and you want to discuss it or you want us to show you something or whatever, you can save it for the end as well. And we'll have a few minutes for that too. So a couple of announcements before we get started. Coming up in March, Mazévo is going to be at a couple of conferences. Both of these are higher education conferences. The first one is in New York City for ACUI. ACUI is college unions. And so those of you that are ACUI members, if anybody's going to New York, we would love to see you. I'll be there along with my colleague Claire. So it'll be the two of us there in New York City for that. That's March 17th and 18th. And then the week after, we're going to travel back across to Albuquerque, where we will be at the ACID-I conference in Albuquerque. That's on the 24th and 25th. So it'd be great to see you there if you are going to be traveling to any of those. We don't have to travel too much here at Mazévo, but which is great. I'm not complaining about that. But on the other hand, it is great to see people in person. Definitely look forward to that. So the other thing I wanted to mention is I wanted to give a shout out to a few new customers that came on board with us right around the end of the year last year. So wanted to mention University of Washington Facilities Department, the Calvary Church of Souderton, Bowling Green State University, and Southern Arkansas University Tech. So four new Mazévo customers that are all in the process of implementing Mazévo right now. So if anybody is on the call from those institutions, welcome. All right. Well, that's all I had for announcements today. So we'll go ahead and kick things off. We're going to be talking about the reporting tools here in Mazévo and showing some of the highlights of those different tools that we have. Wendy Newland is going to be starting things with us, and I'll just go ahead and turn it over to Wendy.
Thanks, Brian. Let me just grab this and share my screen. Everybody see my screen? Brian, can you shout out? Do you see it?
Yes.
Mazévo? Great. Okay, we're just going to buzz down this list here. So I start the event list. So it is just that. It is a list of events, a public-facing report. And in this drop-down with all of our reports, we have things to make it really easy for you to run these. You could run it today plus a number of days into the future, tomorrow, specific dates. Maybe you want to run it 20 through the 25th. This week, next week, this month, or next month. So I'm going to run it this month. Now you'll see a couple boxes here, include private events. Well, what makes an event private? So when you are creating an event, you've seen this little box, probably private event, that will keep the event off of this public-facing report. And then on the event viewer, the bookings will look like this. They'll have a little eye with a line through it. So I want to include my private events on this report. And then, of course, you can paginate it by date. Each date will have a new page. And then down below here, you'll see these statuses pre-populated. Well, what makes those statuses pre-populate? When you are creating statuses in the settings, there's a checkbox. Do you want this status to show on the book or reports? And if it is flagged as yes, these statuses will pre-populate in this filter. So I'm going to remove academic confirmed. I don't want my classes to show on this report, but you can also add filters to our reports. Buildings, rooms, room tags, which is a collection of rooms, event types, organization types, or even contact. You could run an event list for a certain contact. So when you select something to filter on and click add, a new field populates, and this is where you can enter the other criteria. I'm actually going to remove this because I want to run it for all buildings. Joe will be talking about publishing reports in a little bit, but let me just click on run, and you're going to understand why this is a kind of a bird's eye view report. I've seen this used at security desks, or maybe the front desk, the receptionist, they don't have access to a computer or whatnot. It's just a bird's eye view of the events going on for the day. Okay. So the next report that I want to move into, I call this the queen mother of all reports, and setup crews use it, your operations team. And you'll see why this is the queen mother of all reports. Again, here's our date range drop-down box. I'm going to run it for this month. You can print this report in grayscale, and you'll see why in just a second when I run it. And then we have three formats: by building, by date time, or by booking. So I'm going to run mine by building. Again, there are statuses pre-populated. I'm going to remove my classes. I can also add some more filters here. Now there's two more options on this report: service providers or resource tags, which are a collection of resources underneath of the service provider. I'll be demonstrating that in just a bit. Okay, I'm going to run this report. All right, so first of all, you can see here each blue bar represents a different booking, and that's why you may want to run the report in grayscale, because if you send this to the printer, it's going to use your toner, right? So this is why it's such a comprehensive report. It's got your setup time, your event time, your end time, your teardown time, and then your customer access time. What time does the customer want to get in there before the event actually starts? It's got your event number, your event name, the organization and the contact of the organization, the event coordinator's initials, should your setup crew need to get a hold of the person coordinating the event, the overall attendance, and the status. Down below, you have your service providers in bold with the service times, the quantities of the resources, your resources, and then any notes or special instructions that go along with those resources. Okay. All right, the next format I want to show you, by date, by time. So now you're seeing these same bookings, but now they're in setup time order, okay, regardless of the building. Right. The next format, this is by booking. So each booking now will be on a separate page. Okay, now I told you I would get back to this filtering and showing you the service provider filter. You may have an instance where your catering department says, look, I want to see this report, but I only want to see catering. I don't want to see the equipment. I don't want to see the AV. That would be a time when you would filter on your service providers. So I will select catering, and then I'll talk about these boxes in just a bit: display all bookings and display other resources. And now I'll run this. And you'll see that the report is only 7 pages now because, oops, let me go back to this format. I like this format better. It's much shorter now because it's only pulling out bookings that have catering. Okay, it's leaving out all those other bookings, don't need to see them. However, there may be a time that the catering department says, well, wait a minute, I want to see all the bookings with catering, but I need to see the other events as well. Why? Maybe they just want to do a double check and make sure there's no other bookings that need catering. So that's when you might want to check that box, display other bookings. So now I'm seeing the events with catering, but also the other events that are happening that don't necessarily have catering, but maybe need to be double checked. Okay. And then let's look at the next one. Display other resources. Okay. When that box is checked, what it will do is it will show the other resources on the event that has the catering. So let me run that. There you go. So here's the event with the catering, but it's also showing you room setup, AV, and equipment in addition to the other events. Okay. But what you're not seeing are events that just have AV or just have catering. Okay. And again, publish the report. Joe will be discussing that. Okay, the next report I want to talk about is our service order report. So this can be used by your staff to prepare orders for a single service provider. So let's just take a look at this. You've got your date range drop-down box again. I'm going to run it for this month. I'm going to choose the service provider of catering. You can opt to show the pricing if you want. I'm going to remove my classes. You can add your filters again. Maybe you want to run it for certain buildings, certain rooms, etc. But think of this report as if you have delivery carts going to different rooms. You can print these service orders, put them on the carts so your team knows what to put on the cart and what to deliver where. If there are two services on the event, a breakfast and a lunch, you will see two reports. So let me run this. And there you go. So it's got your event name, the organization, date, setup time and event time of the event, the service time, and then the service that's needed. Okay. The last report that I'm going to show are the room cards. So we have some customers that have room sign holders outside of their doors, and this just provides a way for you or them to put the document in those room sign holders. Again, here's your date ranges. I'm going to run it for this month. You can print them on a single day or multiple dates. I will show both. You can opt to display your header, which I will. And then you can run this portrait or landscape. I'll run it portrait and remove my classes. Here's your filters again. Okay, now I'm going to run this. And here's what we've got. Okay, so again, this is the single day, 29 pages. If I keep going, I'll get to January 8th, January 9th, but it's just the events on that day in that room. What I have seen some people do, they like to run it for multiple days, maybe for a week. Here's what's going on in this room for the entire week. I'm going to run it for this month just to get some data on here so you can see what it looks like. So now I'm seeing what's going on in room 218 for the month because I ran it for the month. Okay. All right. And now I'll just show you what it looks like landscape. Oops, didn't mean to hit publish. There you go. And as with all of our reports, you can create PDFs out of them. Okay, over to you, Dean.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to show you the next two reports on the list there, resource usage and this daily log report. So resource usage, it's really geared towards people that are managing, the resources and, service providers that are delivering things. There's really three options for this report. So let me run it for a few days here. Again, you have those date options are all in here. The version of this is quantity used. And again, we have all the filters here. I'm just hit run. So what this is going to do is day by day, resource by resource, it's going to tell you how many times or the quantity of usage for that. So this is actually pretty good for like catering and things like that. So if I filter this down to catering, you'll see beverages. So for each day, here's the amount of beverages. Now, if I click this button up here, it's going to collapse that for the date range. So I did it for a week. It's going to collapse that and say, well, in the next week, you're going to need 128 bottled waters and then 25 servings of coffee. The one thing you can do is you can click on these numbers here. They're actually links. And when you click on it, it's actually going to pull up a list of the events that resource is on. So you can get to it there. You can actually open the event if you click on that event name. So that's the different formats of that. And again, if you needed the total inventory or the total usage of a resource day by day, that's the by date option there. Now, the difference between the quantity used and the quantity in use. So this is your inventoriable items. So these are your chairs and tables and projectors, things that you actually have got a limited inventory on. And so when you run this, what you're going to get is, well, let me take catering out of here. You're going to get a list of all of the resources, inventoriable, and then we explode this for each 1 hour block. Now, when you look at this, it's like, what am I looking at? My recommendation is come up here and say limit to overcommitted, because really what you want to focus on is tell me the things I've got a problem on with, right? So, and as we look at this first one, we've got a podium issue here on the 3rd of February, and it's all afternoon. So each 1 hour block is overcommitted. And we look here, there's 4 that were used or requested, if you will. The inventory is 3. So if I click on this little graph, it's showing me just kind of a daily look at that podium. And when we're out of sync here, the orange line is the inventory quantity right there. You can also click on this quantity here and see, well, what are the events that are using that? And you get that listed for you right there. So that's what this quantity used. So this really does, if you limit it to overcommitted, really helps you find things that, you're going to have a problem with. You're going to have to go rent something or break somebody's heart that they're not going to be able to get the podium. Okay. This last column here, I'm going to show you that in this next one, but quantity requested. So these are from requesters, and they've asked for a quantity of a resource, and that quantity is not available. So what we do only for requesters is we take the quantity they wanted and we stick it in a special bucket and we hold on to it. Because you could come in here and you can fulfill their request or delete it very easily. And I'll show you that in 1 second on the next one here. So that's this requester inventory issues. So when I click on this, it's showing me 2 events that have issues on them. So let me go to this chess club meeting here. You can see they requested 1 podium. And if I go in here, we've talked about this in some of the other things. It's gonna warn me again that podium's in use. And we've got the little tractor symbol over here. That's what I call this. It's a warning. You've got some inventory issues. So if I click on that, it's actually going to pull up all of the resources that were requested and what's available. So it's kind of showing you, hey, Dean requested 1, none are available. And my choices here as an event planner are, well, go ahead and give him the 1. Now I'll have to go rent the equipment, or I can delete that. And if I delete it, it's going to delete the request for the 1 podium, and you're not going to, it just removes it from the whole thing. So we can do that. And now the inventory conflict's gone. So that's kind of a draconian way of cleaning that up. Now, if you want, you can come in here to this Weavers meeting and you're seeing they requested 12 tables. Let's go look at that one. And we'll see here that there are 6 available. So what you might do on this one, if I click on this resolve inventory issues, I now have another choice. I can say use available, which is 6, or use requested, which would be 12, or I can say, look, I'm not going to give you any of these tables and delete the request. So that's kind of a different way of looking at inventory for requesters. That's only for requesters. So going back to our inventory report, resource usage here. Again, your filters, you can fine tune that by service providers or by resource groupings in those resource tags. So, and of course, by status. The next report I want to show you is the daily log report. So for the people that are using that, this is how you get the report out. Let me explain what it is. You have the ability to create like a questionnaire for your building managers or for your service providers or anybody in the system that you want to ask them to fill out a report, like an incident report. So this is the tool that you would use to fill out the report. You'd file a log report, and I'll just go ahead and fill one out here, this incident report. So I've named it and I asked these questions. And so you're in control of what do you need to ask. So let's say, you ask all of the people on your staff, hey, if somebody slipped and fell or there's a problem, fill out an incident report. And so you're going to determine what the questions are for that incident report. And they can be completely different from the shift report that's back here. And so you design the report and then you assign it to the people that can actually fill it out. And they get to fill it out day by day. They can fill it out more than one time. God forbid you have two incidents on one day, but somebody could fill out the report more than once. To run the report, the overall report, you're going to run the daily log report. And you'd come in here and say, I want to find everything for a particular period of time. And I'll do it for today. I'll do it for today. And I'm going to hit run because I've got a couple in here. And it's going to print one log report, one submitted log report per day per report. So here you can see that this user, Dean.ops, submitted the report early this morning, and there was an incident. And that's the questions. And then here's what the other report looks like. And again, you can define as many of these as you want in your system. Now, when you define them, that's done over here in settings under the daily log. So you'll see those two here. But you also have the option when you define one of these is to notify users immediately upon the submission of that. So you can send that out. If it's an incident report, you probably want everybody in management to know about it immediately rather than in the middle of the next night when you get the report. So, but those are my two reports that I wanted to show you, and I'll turn it over to, I believe it's Claire is next. So
Yes, thanks,
let me
Dean.
stop sharing.
Oh, yep. That was too fast. Okay, hold on. Okay, I'm going to show you this analytics report here. So I'm going to click on that. And then you can do the same kind of date range that everyone's shown you. I'm just going to do the specific dates. So I have it from the first of 2024 till the end of 2024. And I'm going to analyze by building. There's all these different options you can analyze by. And you can also do everything or your top 5 or your top 10. I'm going to leave it at 10. You've got your filters again, just like with all the other reports. So when I run this, it's going to give me a pie chart first with all the data. And then if you click on this data down here, it goes through the whole year, month by month, and it will total it out over here for you. And you can click on any of these to get more information. So here's my buildings. And then if I wanted to see more information, I could just click on that. So that is the analytics one. Now, if I jump down here to revenue analytics, if I do last month, again, you've got those same filters. So you can set this up really any way you want. And once you get it set, that's where you would publish it. And Joe's going to talk more about that. So I'm going to do last month by event. Now I did put a service provider. I just want to look at my catering. So if I run this, it's just going to show me catering information. Now, this is a really long, big, um, big report here. So what you can do, any of these columns, if you drag this up here, then it will go by organization, and then it puts the totals down here for you. And of course, like any of our reports, you can export them, but this report just gives you so much flexibility on what you want to see and how you want to see it. So if you go down, then you have each individual um, organization listed and what the revenue was. So that's what I wanted to show you about the revenue analytics. I'll stop sharing and let Joe finish up.
Cool. Thanks a lot, everybody. And I will get over to share my screen. There it is. All right. So what everybody has shown you is all the different types of reports that we have here under the reporting area. They've also shown you how to customize them, adding filters for this or that. You may want this filter for catering. You may want a different filter applied to the same type of report for facilities or for audiovisual, any of those. So in doing that, we want to be able then to not have to go back in every single time and recreate those filters, right? So what we want to do is save those. So as an example, where Wendy was showing the event list, creating and adding whatever filters you want, and you can do that for any number of them. So each time you develop one of these with the filters that you want, you don't want to come back in and re-add them. So what you want to do is save it. And the save option is labeled here called publish. And so when you publish this, this is where you give it a name and you make it available to others or not, so that you can then just simply come back in and do a one click to get the report executed. You may have to put in a date range based on how you set up your report, but that's the purpose of this. So you're not re-adding all those filters each time. So on the publish, once you've figured out what you want and so forth, you do the publish, then you want to put in here a report description. Now, my suggestion on the report description is to make it as clear as possible for what filtering you're applying to this report. Because you may have 4 or 5 different event lists, and you may want to say, here's one for security, or here's one for just the certain buildings or things like that. And you need to see that very clearly so that you know which one to execute. Because your people that you're going to make this available to the public is meaning any other user that has report access. They will then only see the name of the report to know to execute it. Okay, so when I go into the published reports page, I see my list of reports. And if I'm not an admin, I'm not given all the other reports. I'm only seeing this list. So that's where you want to make sure that name is very descriptive so they can read that. Now, what you're looking at here is me as an admin, and so I have some extra items on this particular layout or configuration of the report, because as an admin, I can change our ownership and I can edit the report. But others will have this subscribe, copy, and email link, because they could come in and say, well, I need to run this 7-day report, but I need to do it every single week. So I want to subscribe to it. So, and the subscription just means that we're going to send you an email at whatever that interval is. So when I click on subscribe, I'm going to say, well, you know, I want to get this every Monday morning. So I'm just going to check off the day that I want it, and I'm going to save it. So what this is going to do is use my user account email address to then notify me that this report is ready to execute. And in that email, I'm simply going to get a link to this report that I can simply click on and execute. Okay. That's me as a user. Now, as an admin, I can actually go into this list, and this little icon right here is my manage of subscriptions. A user doesn't have this, but an admin does. So I could simply click on this and say, here's who I want to subscribe to this. So if I want to subscribe Wendy to this, I could say, well, I'm going to give it to her on every Wednesday, and she'll get an email notification of that. Okay. So I get to manage who those people are. Okay. Um, Other options that you can do when you get a published report is you can simply copy the link for that report to your clipboard, and then I can just simply paste that in an email or text, whatever I want to, and paste it somewhere. Okay. I can also click the email link, and that will then say, well, who are you going to want to send it to? Now, this list is only the users within your Mazévo account. So it does have all of those people, but you can select any one of those and send it, and that'll just simply send an email link right away to that person. Okay. The other that I have as an admin for this report is that I can edit it. So when I go in to edit that report, I can change its filters. I can then preview it, and I can then save those changes up here. Now, I also have under the edit capability, the ability to save or edit the name of that report. So if some people say, well, wait a minute, that was not descriptive enough, you can go in and change that. You also get the option to make it available to others or not. Okay. And then you can just save those changes as you like. You could change it all the way around. You can do a new date range. You can add any other filters and things like that. So that's the editing of those reports. Now, if I'm also finished with the report at some point, I can also just delete that report. Okay. Say I just needed it for 6 months or something, then I'm finished with it. I don't use it anymore. I can simply delete it. Right? Now, the last function as an admin that I can do is, well, sometimes people make reports and they make them available to others, and then you have a little turnover in your staffing. So you need to say, well, how do I, as an admin, get access to change that report? I can't even delete it because I'm not the owner. Only the owner can edit it and change it and delete it. So as an administrator in Mazévo, you can actually change this report to be a new owner. So I can select from anybody that is on my list here of other users in Mazévo to now own this. And so then when I save that, then Wendy becomes the owner of this report. And you see, I no longer have the manage of the subscriptions. I can no longer remove or delete the report or edit it. So only Wendy can now on her side of the screen. Okay. So there's a lot of flexibility in there with regards to managing those reports that you have saved. And I have seen some people make, a daily ops report for 5 different departments and everything. So some of these can get pretty long. So I strongly say again, provide your names for those people because, again, they're only going to see that. They're not going to see it because when I run this report, now that I've given it to Wendy, I just execute and it runs the report. So I can't actually see what criteria is used on the back end for that. Okay. So it's good, again, to make sure your report description is very descriptive for those people. Okay. Let's see. I think that was all that I had to cover. Let me see what that's that one. Yep. Yeah. Again, any of those filters that you add, they will be saved. That is a very key point to make sure you run this and try it to make sure you've got the right output before you click publish to then save it. But again, you can easily edit it in things too through the windows that I've shown you. and manage those reports for your other users. Okay. Now, the last part that I want to show about published reports is at the user level. When you have a user that may only be a requester, so I've got several different accounts in here, and this user on my other security roles, I can actually make them a report viewer, which means they can only view reports that are published and saved. So this is a key thing to make sure you've got your users seeing the reports the way you want them to, right? If I give them report publisher, that means that they can create new reports and save them. Okay. And then the third reporting option here is the analytics, so they can actually see those analytic reports that Claire was showing you. Okay. So you do not have to give somebody all three of these. You can, as in this case, give the one just the view. And when I log in as that person, then I can only see those reports that are published, and I can only execute them. I could subscribe to them. That's a function that it can do, but I cannot edit it. I can't delete it or anything like that. Okay. That's the published reports section.
All right. Thanks, Joe. I'll go ahead and take over now, and we'll look at one other reporting option in here. Let me bring that up. So the part I want to talk about is this find events right here. Now, you may not be thinking of this as a reporting tool, which is why I want to point it out. Most people use this, it kind of serves double duty. Most people use it to do exactly what it says, to go in and find certain events. And so when you first go in here, we give you the common things that you may use to look up an event. Like if you know the organization or the contact or the room it's happening in, or even the name, those tend to be the most common ways to search for an event. They're not all of them, obviously, but they're the most common. So we put them right up here. The other thing you can do with this, sometimes you're doing the search for a needle in a haystack thing. So you can just come in here. If you leave it at all events, and for instance, I just hit today, this is a little drop down, so I can pick, whatever date range I want. But let's just say I want to look at today. All I got to do is click the button, and it's going to have in here a list of events. Now, depending on how big your facility is and everything, it's maybe quite a considerable list, especially if you're looking at a whole months or something like that. If you've been using Mazévo for any period of time, you probably are already aware of this search tool right up here, but you can use this to search for anything at all in this grid. So, I used it to search for part of the contact name, and it brought it up for me right here. So I just wanted to point that out in case you haven't used that before. It is a handy tool to go in and help you find things quickly that way. So this is the search function there. Now, I mentioned like needle in a haystack before, right? It's like you may know there's an event that was going on, but you're not exactly sure when it was happening. If we go back here, maybe I'm looking for an organization that had an event with me, but I don't remember when it was, but I need to find it for whatever reason. So I can pull up my group right here, my organization, Graduate Business Programs. And I believe that we had something scheduled for them this year. So I'm just going to use this year, cast a wide net, and see if I can pull up their event. And I come up empty-handed in this case. It's like, it's not there. Another thing I wanted to point out with this is you've got these little arrows on either side of your date. So I can jump forward an entire year or back an entire year. So obviously I missed here. It's like, I don't have anything scheduled for them yet this year. If we go back though to last year, let's see what we get. Now I'm seeing something. So keep that in mind as well. That's where the year search kind of comes in handy. You can do this for like a month or a day as well if you're trying to, scroll forward or back with smaller increments. But I wanted to point that out as well because sometimes that's not quite as obvious to folks. So now going back to the topic of today's presentation, reporting, You can always export this in if you want to. So notice here we've got both PDF and Excel to do that. So if I get this the way that I want and I just need to get this data out of here, I can do that. We don't see that a whole ton in the standard filters because that's really, again, this is just mainly a searching type tool most of the time. However, that story changes if you move it to advanced. So you've got these different things up here. I'm going to go to advanced now. Now, the big difference with advanced is two things. With advanced, you've got a whole lot more filters that you can add here. So if I click this add filter, I mean, I've got all kinds of things that I can use to search and filter down my results by. So there's a lot of filters available with advanced. The other thing is these columns. So when I go to search for the data, it's going to bring back the data in these columns. And so I can see these are the columns that are in here. And I can even click in this area and I can add other columns to this. And you see we've got all kinds of other columns you can add. So that's the other piece of advanced. And this is really where the reporting type tool comes in because you may be really wanting to pull specific information out of Mazévo, and this tool gives you the opportunity to do it. Now we give you three different kind of default ways or default column sets that you can use here. So the first one is bookings. This is going to show me booking information, which are individual dates, times, locations. But I can also flip that to events. And if you look closely, you'll notice things change a little bit here. I'm no longer seeing an individual date or location in here. This is more at the event level, which is that higher level. Just show me what's going on in a certain time period. And then we have a resource option as well, which gives me a whole bunch of columns. This is showing me, in this case, both booking columns that I'm seeing here and some event stuff. And then also as we move on down, you're seeing more into the resource level. So what the service provider is, the resource, the quantity, things like that. So these are just built in there by default. So you can kind of switch back and forth depending on what you need. Now I'm going to move it to bookings and I'm not going to add any filters right here. I'm just going to hit search. A way to kind of illustrate the different columns is, let me just pull up a month here. I just want to do a whole month. So in my case here, I'm going to get close to 600 bookings for the month. And so you can see here, this is just showing every single booking for the entire month and all of its data right here. And if that's what I'm looking for, I've got the export button right here. I can push it into Excel and then I can continue to work with it in there. In this case, I wanted to illustrate what changing the columns up does. So these are the columns that, are the standard booking columns. If we go back here and just change it to events and now run the same exact search for the entire month, instead of getting 585 results, I'm now collapsed down to 89. Because, for instance, this women's swim practice here, instead of, they probably had like 50 bookings all month long. Well, now I'm only seeing it represented once because that's a single event that happened to have 50 bookings underneath it. So I'm seeing, when their first booking is for the month and the last booking, and that's how I can kind of see it that way. So it collapses it down to 89. And then if we look at resources here and do it again, now we're going to be back up to probably, there we go, 500 or so events. And so these are all the bookings that have resources on them. And you can see it puts a different line in the grid for every single item per booking in there. So I can see that and the amount, stuff like that. This does go nicely into Excel here, so that's a great way to export it if that's what you're looking for. All right, so let's talk about another common use case for this, which is changing up the columns. So let's say here, I'm going to use the example here. Maybe I'm with the AV team and we have a question on the request form that people submit. When they submit their request for an event, it's got the dates and times and everything. And they also put on there any AV equipment that's needed. And on my case, they're asked some questions about that AV equipment, like, do you need assistance setting it up or something like that? Well, those event questions, you're able to actually use those as columns in here to create your reports. So let's say here I want to use event level information, and I click in this grid, and I've got all kinds of other columns I can put in here. Let's say I also want to put the contact information, like their email and phone number. But if we scroll to the bottom down here, you can see these are all my event questions. So these are all the questions that folks have to answer when they submit a request. And this is the one I'm interested in. Will you require assistance with the AV? So I'm going to select that. So that is now going to be a column on my report. So again, I'm going to run it for this month, and I just hit search. And what it's going to do, it's going to pull up all of the events happening this month. But I now have this column over here that's going to, have my question on it. Do you require assistance with the AV? And you can see a lot of them didn't have anything in here, and that's because they weren't entered as a request. Somebody on the back end probably put those in. So, but some of them do, and I could sort this if I needed to get all the answers right up here at the top, things like that. So now I've got it the way I like. If I wanted to, I could export this and work with it. But notice too, I added the contact, email, and phone. So if I'm with the AV team, this might be all I care about, right? Is I run this, every week or something like that, and I can kind of start planning things so I can export it and do things with it. The other thing, though, is just like what Joe and the others showed you with the reports, is that you can publish them with this. So when you get it all set and all your filters and everything in here, if we hit the search button here again, I've got the ability to, we don't call it publish here, we call it save view, but it does the same thing. So you got this the way you like here, and I can just go ahead and hit this save view, and it's AV, give it a name, make it available to people, and hit save. Now it's out there as a published report. It's going to function like a published report, including the ability to subscribe to it. So you could put your AV team on there, or the individual that wants it, and they could get an email with a link to run this. I'll also mention too that they could run this without a login to Mazévo. So if you have somebody that really doesn't need to access Mazévo ever, but they do like to get this report that you've created, you can subscribe them to it, or just send them the link and let them bookmark it. And then whenever they click that link, it will run and get them the data that way. So it's a great way to distribute the information by saving the view right here with that. So that's what that's one kind of use case for these reports, is using the event questions in here. There's a lot of other use cases as well for this. Last thing I want to show you with this is just the My Views and Public Views up here. So this is just a shortcut to get to these saved filters and find events. So in this case, My Views, these are all the ones that I've saved here previously. So you can see what, and the one we just saw here is this AV assistance. And this gives you the ability, just like with a saved or a published report, you just click it, run it with one click. It'll ask you for the date range, and then it gives you the data up here. The other thing I wanted to mention too, in case we didn't point this out earlier, some of these have little hearts next to it. If this is a report that I run all the time and I want it to show up at the top, when I click this, the next time I come in here, I'll just show you. I go to, I'll need to refresh it. The next time I come in here, it's going to be at the top of My Views. So it just moves it to the top. This is handy as you start collecting a whole bunch of these saved views, right? You want to put the ones that you actually run the most up at the top. That's what the favorites are for right there. So that's how that works there. And then the public views, these are all the views in here that others have possibly created. Now in my system, most of them are created by me, so I don't have a lot to show there, but in most cases, you'll see, if there are others on your team creating views, you're going to see those right from here. So you can jump to those pretty quickly that way. So, all right.
Brian, can
Yes.
you go back to advanced find events? I just want to make sure. Yeah, and then just to add more columns, will you show how you click there and then, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this is where I go in and I add the different columns like that event question that I added in there. So the event questions always show up too at the bottom if you're looking for those. So we just collect them all down there at the bottom. So yeah, you just add those in and now you're going to run it and you'll have, attendance and billing code and that kind of stuff added onto the report for you. Um, the column grouping is available as well. I don't know if I mentioned that before either, but if I wanted to group it by status, I could do that. And here's all my academic confirmed, and here's all my confirmed ones right underneath it. And these collapse and you can expand them that way. So, all right. Okay, so that's what we wanted to show you today on the reporting side. Now you may be going, well, wait a minute, what about the confirmation? What about the invoice? We could spend a whole entire hour, and we have before, on those topics, like on the invoice and the confirmation. We have some Mazévo Connect sessions that are recorded. If you really want to deep dive on how those work, you can go check that out that way. But that's what we wanted to show you as far as the general usage reports go. So I do see it looks like that Katie has a question. So if you want to unmute yourself, Katie, feel free to ask your question here.
I am very sorry. That was a mistake. I don't have
Oh,
a question, but thank you for the good info this week.
hey, I'm on it. I'm ready. I'm ready. But that's a good segue, though, for any Q&A. If anybody has any questions at this point and wants to unmute yourself, feel free. We can just address your question that way if you'd like. All right. Dean, do we have any questions in the chat, or have you been taking care of those?
I've answered all of them, so.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, I hope the lack of questions means that we covered everything adequately today. If not, though, please do. You're welcome to send us an email, or if you think of something later, what have you. But yeah, if that's all we have, we can go ahead and wrap things up. So I'd like to thank everybody for participating today. I will get this recording out here soon. Next month, we already have the topic selected. It's going to be on approval workflows. So stay tuned for that. I'll be sending out an email here next week at some point announcing that. But thank you, everyone, for your participation today, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.